Hey guys, Chairman here. I just got second place at BCS Anaheim with Dual Laners Pah-Chin, which is a deck I've been playing and trying to perfect for a long time. If you want to see the deck profile, it's on Tress's Collectibles channel. And honestly, it's really similar to the previous deck profile that I have on this channel. So if you saw that deck profile, what you see here is probably not too surprising. It's not too different. I basically made the changes I said I would in that deck profile, which is like really funny. But yeah. So in this video, instead I will give you some pointers to playing the deck, because I do know that a lot of you guys want to try the deck and potentially might be struggling because the deck is just so strange. It's such a weird deck. So I'll kind of give you some of the things that I figured out so far playing the deck, and I'm honestly still learning how to play the deck. Like, I don't think I'm a master of this deck by any means. I've just played it a lot, and so like even like at Anaheim, I was still learning new things about the deck. It's just that much of a interesting deck, and there's just a lot of depth to it. But yeah, so let's just get started. I think the first thing that some people want to ask about is Mulligan. Like, what do you even keep in Mulligan? Because it's such a weird thing. So generally speaking, I want to prioritize my primary game plan, which is the 1-0 Chifuyu, the dual laners, because I need the stock first to get anything going. And then after that, if the matchup if I need to get Pah-Chin in the matchup, I'll prioritize Pah-Chin. So let's say we're playing against the most common matchup right now, which is Quince, right? So I'm mulliganing against Quince here, and let's just say I'm going first, just as an example. So let's go ahead and draw our 5 cards. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so far, obviously don't want to see climaxes early, but that's okay. Generally speaking, I don't keep climaxes in the opening hand, but if I do draw climaxes early, those are actually pretty good, because it does help me get cards I specifically need from the waiting room, as well as if we can get a Emma Brainstorm, it's going to help us trigger clean and also dig through our deck. So here, Takemichi is honestly a great card, going first and going second, because of the ability to get the stock. And here I do have a good turn 1 play with the Takemichi, and the remaining 4 cards I'm just gonna ditch, because I want to look for Chifuyu and other level 0s to help us get to level 1 quickly. So I'm gonna mulligan these 4 cards and draw 4 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Oh wow, whoa, these are awesome. This is honestly such a good first hand. Wow, if we could, man, if I can open like this every game, okay, like I don't think I can lose. All right, so here I want to show you guys some of my favorite strategies for going first. But before we begin, let's go ahead and draw the rest of our going first hand. So draw for a turn. Over here we don't really need the Pah-Chin this early, and we can always get it later. So we'll clock this one and draw 2 more. Pah-Chin and another Chifuyu. Oh my goodness, wow. I swear this is not scripted. I just shuffled the deck, but this basically can illustrate many different strategies that this deck can go for. So if you're going first and you already have access to both Chifuyu, or you feel like you can get access to Chifuyu very easily, either through maybe like a Takemichi plus a Hinata, or maybe like you're feeling confident, feeling lucky with the Mikey mills. Also, generally speaking, you want Mikey or Emma in this kind of hand so that you can get a lot of mills really early. If you have access to double Chifuyu and you're going first, I would recommend to pass turn. You heard me right. I would recommend a pass turn. If you pass turn right now, your opponent is going to be at 0 damage, right? 0 damage. They're going to clock to 1 damage, and they're going to attack you 1 or 2 times probably, right? Maybe sometimes they'll attack you 3 times, but generally speaking, it's like 1 or 2 times. Even if they attack you 3 times, it's not even that bad. So let's pretend that we pass turn here. Our opponent clocks, draws 2, and attacks us direct for 2-2, right? Let's just say we go 2-2. So we take 2 damage, and then we take 2 more damage. So now we're at 0-5, and they're at 0-1, right? So then we can draw, clock ourselves level to 1, and then double play the Chifuyu. Our clock goes into our waiting room, so that gives us the stock that we can get, that we can start building stock compression. And let's say they attack 2 characters, right? We can just front attack, and even if we trigger, that's like, hopefully we only trigger once, but let's say we like trigger once. So this one triggers once, we do 2 damage. This one triggers once, we do 1 damage. Now they're at 0-4. It's very hard for most decks from 0-4 to hit themselves to 1, right? You have to clock themselves twice, and not many decks are running the engine or the cards to do that. So that means they're stuck at level 0. They're stuck at level 0. They lost 2 of their level 0 attackers, and they're staring down 2 107Ks. Like they're probably not going to be able to kill these or contest these at all. They might not even be able to attack 3 times because they're still stuck at level 0. So maybe they attack once or twice. Maybe they do attack all 3 times, but that means they're either siding these or crashing these, which is like horrible for them. And then we basically just get another turn of double Chifuyu uncontested. Like they gave us no pressure. We didn't lose any of these. We didn't even need a counter for them. So we just basically get to like not clock even if we want to, and just get another turn of the Chifuyu. And it's even better if we have Emma, because on the second turn of Chifuyu, if we don't cancel and we don't have enough cards in waiting room, we actually do need a way to mill more cards into waiting room. And the Emma would come into handy. Mikey also does that, gets us more cards. But yeah, this is a great strategy. If you open double Chifuyu and you have a good feeling about like your hand, like the rest of your hand is like looking pretty good, I would just pass. Going first, just pass. It's kind of a weird thing to get used to, but yeah, it's definitely something you can do. Just pass. All right, but let's say you don't have double Chifuyu, right? Or let's say you have the double Chifuyu, but you want to try something else. Here's another cool thing you can do. Going first, you can go Takemichi, right? Just clock yourself, blind stock. And here you have 2 options with this hand, right? You can either go for the Hinata or you can go for the Emma. Now, generally speaking, if I don't have the Chifuyu here, I would go for Emma. Or sorry, I would go for Hinata, right? So Hinata will pay 1, clock myself, grab a Chifuyu, and then, you know, I'm closer to my level 1 turn. If it grabs me the missing Chifuyu, like if after this I have double Chifuyu, I would leave the Hinata in the front row and just attack once with the Takemichi. The reason why we want to leave the Hinata in the front row in this specific scenario is we want to soak up damage, because if we use the Hinata, let's say we use the Hinata, right? So we pay 1, clock ourselves, right? This going first, we're already at 0-3. And if they play 2 characters and attack, then like let's say we do this and we move the Hinata to the back row. They tri-field us. Very easily they can blast us to high level 1, right? And we don't want that. We actually want to stay as low damage as possible. And because we clocked ourselves twice going first, it leaves us very susceptible to getting bum rushed if our board has 2 empty lanes and they just tri-field us. So in this situation, I actually do sacrifice the Hinata just as a way to body block here. And again, field doesn't matter with dual laners, because eventually we only have 2 attackers, and then if we go into Pah-Chin, we actually just don't care about our hand or our resources. And like usually, like if you play a lot of dual laners, you find out that even if you like save the Hinata, quote unquote save it, we like often just play over her anyways, because she's not a very useful card. So by leaving her in front row, we actually get to use her as a damage soak. They don't get the direct attack, and we have a less likelihood of getting blasted to like high level 1. So that's the option if we don't have the Chifuyu. All right, so that's one thing we can do. But if we do have the Chifuyu already, then instead of playing the Hinata, I would actually just play the Emma and then go for a brainstorm here. And especially in this situation, we're already out 2, so I want to just start milling as fast as possible. So we go for the Emma brainstorm, and then 1, 2. Oh, holy shit! Okay. Oh, okay. Well, see, this is exactly why I want to go for the Emma sometimes. Like in this situation, we hit 3, and then now we can mill 9 more cards from our deck, and we can just start like getting out of this deck as soon as possible, right? And then in the case we mill clean, then that's just 4 clean cards that are no longer in our deck that we don't have to mill. Because the problem with first deck with dual laners is that we only attack twice, which means that we mill 1 less card every single turn. And we honestly don't have that many resources to spend on milling because we're trying to develop so much stock. And if we can get like a turn 1 Emma Brainstorm, that's actually just a really good thing that we can do. So those are kind of our going first options with this deck. Going second, generally speaking, is just you play Takemichi, you bomb them, or you play the Mikey. Mikey gets power for every one of our opponent's characters. And then so these 2 cards kind of carry our going second strategies just to deal with our opponent's level 0 game plan, as well as mill cards and get resources. Generally speaking, you never use Takemichi unless you have a way to pay out the stock immediately, because if it is a climax, and worst case scenario, if it is the Pan's climax, then you're very screwed. So yeah, I would not risk it. I don't think there's any reason to kind of take on that risk with this deck. So yeah, that's kind of like the level 0 game plan. This is probably the trickiest part of the deck because you have the least amount of resources and like the least amount of like cards you can make. So every choice you make is very important. Like once you start stabilizing at level 1 and like during the level 1 game plan, the deck becomes a lot more streamlined and the plays become more obvious. But level 0 is where I had to think the most. I think there's one game where I spent 2.5 minutes thinking about my play from like going from level 0 to level 1. But then the rest of the game I played very quickly because it's a lot more straightforward. So for level 1, let's kind of talk about some of the level 1 game plans. So level 1, you're generally going to want double Chifuyu on the board, either the Mitsuya or the Emma in your back row. So like preferably both, but sometimes you can only have one. Just one is enough. And then your hand ideally should contain both a Pah-Chin, just a single copy of a Pah-Chin, and the Takemichi. And obviously you want to get the counter as well in your hand. This is kind of your ideal setup for level 1. You want some kind of back row to help facilitate your dual laner game plan. You want the option to go into the Pah-Chins. You want this as a great way to pivot between the dual laners and the Pah-Chins. So like for example, if we lose both dual laners, we can use this card single-handedly gets both copies of the Chifuyu back as a -1 card from hand, but that doesn't matter in this deck. And then we obviously want the 1/1 Takemichi for most matchups because this just basically protects one of the Chifuyu for a very good cost. We basically can reverse their character, and then that means that they have an empty slot, and so we can then move the Chifuyu to the other lanes and then contest those lanes. This basically allows us to not lose out, I guess, in the resource game. And then let's see here. And then on top of that, another card you want to prioritize very early is getting a copy of the 3/2 Baji into your hand, because 3/2 Baji is kind of hard to get. And so basically, whenever we play a stock Soul Salvage, we're prioritizing these two cards. First this card, then this card, and then once we get this card, then we start prioritizing the other level 3s for our endgame. The Mikey, and then the Mitsuya. Yeah. So this will always salvage this if we don't have it and we need it. Then it will salvage this, this, this in that order. Yeah, so drawing climaxes is actually really good. These climaxes just turn into in-game pieces for us. Now, whenever we attack with the Chifuyu, what are we stocking? So primarily speaking, I want to stock level 0s. Not only because level 0s are not very good later on in the game, but also because like some matchups like against Attack on Titan, we just don't want level 0s in our deck. They also don't have soul triggers, and we want soul triggers in our deck for late game so we can side attack for small amounts of damage. Now, generally speaking, I will stock the color that I don't need. So for example, if I already have blue and clock, I'll stock the Mikeys. If I already have yellow and clock, I'll stock the Hinatas. If I don't have either in clock, I will stock Takemichi just to get it out of the way. But generally speaking, Takemichi is more useful late game than the other ones because this helps us hit stock thresholds that we otherwise would not be able to hit. Also, a good card to stock in general is the Mitsuya, because the Mitsuya, once we have one, we never need more. And so this is all I always use Mitsuya as like level or stock fodder. This is just a really good card for that. And then Pah-Chins if we don't need additional Pah-Chins, and if the matchup doesn't require a lot of Pah-Chins. So first attack, let's say first attack here, we just stock 2 zeros. Trigger, Pah-Chin. It's okay if we lose a Pah-Chin, it's not a big deal. Our second attack, make sure that on the second attack, we are stocking the Mikey as the 5th card of the stock. So the reason why we want to stock Mikey as the 5th card here is because once we hit 8 stock, we can use the Baji to salvage the climax, and then we'll have 5 stock left. And then if we have 5 stock left and the Mikey's here, then no matter what happens in our deck, we can always pay out the Mikey on the finishing turn and have the Mikey in waiting room to change into. And then so either the 5th or the 4th stock is ideally the best place for the Mikey. The reason why we don't want it earlier is because sometimes we get way too much stock, and then it's hard to pay out into like the first card of your stock. This also protects us from like stock troll mechanics, where like if they stock bomb something, like and the Mikey is at the bottom of our stock, then we just lose the Mikey, which is absolutely silly. So 5th or 4th card is the best, because that way like it's easier for us to pay 8 and hit the Mikey out no matter what. So that's also something you have to do every single game. If you don't do this, you will lose games basically. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, your hand is like this. If your hand is looking like this, and your board is looking like this, and your stock is looking like this with the trigger. So here we trigger. Let's say if we have the Mitsuya here and we didn't have one of these pieces, or let's say like we have the Mitsuya here, In this case, I could actually just discard the Takemichi and grab the second Pah-Chin if I know that the following turn I want to go into Pah-Chin. So that's like a way to kind of get the cards we need from the waiting room. So yeah, if your setup is like this in the mid game, then you're doing good. You're doing good. You're on your way to a potential victory, right? So this basically gives you all the tools you need. So now let's say you lose the Chifuyu, you can get them back with this and the Mitsuya. Or if you want to transition to Pah-Chin, you just go Pah-Chin, and then you can use this to dupe the second Pah-Chin, or you can use this to get other pieces that you need. So yeah, this is the mid game setup. You get here, you're good. All right, let's talk about Pah-Chin a little bit here. So the way Pah-Chin works is that you brainstorm 3 and you try to hit the Pah-Chin out. And if you hit multiple Pah-Chin, you don't get to summon multiple Pah-Chin. So ideally, you'll want to hit 1 Pah-Chin for every brainstorm. And I've done the math on this, and basically, it's a 1 in 3 kind of scenario. So if you have 1 in 3 cards in your deck that are Pah-Chin, then you have the highest chance of hitting Pah-Chin in a brainstorm, hitting exactly 1 Pah-Chin in a brainstorm 3. So if your deck is 11 or 12 cards and 4 of them are Pah-Chin and you brainstorm, you have about like a 50, like maybe close to a 60% chance of hitting exactly 1 Pah-Chin. Obviously, the smaller your deck is, the more likely you're going to hit Pah-Chins in general, but you're trying to hit exactly 1 Pah-Chin. So think about it, if you have 12 cards, 11 or 12 cards in deck and 4 Pah-Chin, that gives you the best chance of hitting exactly 1 Pah-Chin, which means that we want to get to roughly 9 or 10 cards in deck with 2 Pah-Chin, and then when we play the Pah-Chin, we put 2 Pah-Chin back into our deck, and that bumps us up to the 11 or 12 for the ideal hit rate, right? And so that's kind of something you have to think about. You have to count your deck, and you have to count the fact that Pah-Chin shuffles back 2 and then brainstorms 3. So that's kind of a little bit of a weird math thing. A lot of times I'm just fanning out my deck and just doing a lot of like calculations and math with the Pah-Chin. But Pah-Chin's honestly really good just because he can mill out our deck regardless of what situation we're in. So like in this case, like we're kind of out. Like let's say we just like lose a bunch of climaxes, then it's like really nice just to go into Pah-Chin and just mill out the rest of our deck. So sometimes if I'm out completely first deck and there's like, and like if I just attack with dual laners, I'm gonna like eat a ton of damage because I'm just absolutely clean. I'll just go into Pah-Chin even if I don't want to, quote unquote, in the matchup, just so I don't like lose first deck, right? And like going into Pah-Chin even when I don't want to is still better than like taking 8 damage, right? Like because Pah-Chin is still good. I just don't get as much stock, and then in that case I just stop clocking and then I try for like a single Baji end game, or like maybe a Baji and a Mikey end game, just like a lot lower ceiling, but it's better than losing, right? And yeah, so that's another thing to think about. Just when should you pivot to Pah-Chin is like when you have to. Yeah, like you pivot when doing this is just not a good idea. All right, is there anything else that I need to talk about for this deck? I think that's mostly it. Like the hard part is the early game. The late game is the easy part. The late game you just kind of bring it home without too much of an issue. The hard part definitely is the early game. I think the last thing I want to talk about, I guess, is markering with Mikey. What cards do you marker? Again, since the Mikey can send the markered card to the bottom of your deck, if your deck is like small, you can use that to get a good trigger on your Mikey. So like let's say in this situation, let's pretend that we have the combo situation going on. Let's do not great combo. Let's do like a 12 stock somewhat scuff combo. So let's say this is our endgame board with 5 stock like this, and all this in waiting room. We have the climax, and then actually let's do the Emma here, because Emma is definitely one of the better examples of this. Yeah, so let's say we play the Mikey here, right? Depending on what we want, we can marker a soul trigger or a non-soul trigger, right? These are basically the 2 options that we have. And in this situation, if they're close to dead, I would always just marker the non-soul trigger, and here's why. So you can marker the non-soul trigger here, right? And then you play the climax, you give the effect to the Baji, probably the Baji, but you can give it to anything really, it doesn't really matter. And so you go ahead and attack with this one. This one goes to the bottom of the deck. Trigger from the top of the deck. Attack with this one. Trigger from the top of the deck. Attack with this one. This time you're gonna do. Wait, actually, I miscounted. Pretend there's one less card in here. Hold on. All right, attack with this one. You go ahead and check top 2. Decide which one you want to trigger. In general here, yeah, I'm probably siding here. So the one that you give the Emma to is probably siding because you're trying to scout for like a side for 1 or 2 rather than a front for like 3 or 4. So side here for 1, and then you go ahead and do the pay 8 shenanigans. Discard, sack the climax. Find the Mikey. Put everything underneath the Mikey. And then now your Mikey gets to attack with the card that you've bottom decked from the first Mikey burn. And in general, at this point, since your opponent is eating 5 burn 1s, you don't really want to be swinging for like 3 damage because it's like a high chance that they're closer to like 3-5, 3-6 than 3-4, 3-3, right? Because like if your other attacks have hit them close to lethal, then like your final swing, you don't want to actually overswing. So then if you're fronting here, then you just want to front for 2. You don't have the climax anymore, so it's a front for 2. But let's say you want to side, and like maybe it's like a level 2 or something. Then you can stack a soul trigger, and then you can side for 1, right? So those are kind of your 2 options you could go for. But generally speaking, yeah, since your last attack is a front attack, I would not go for the soul trigger unless you're really far from lethal. In which case, then yeah, maybe soul trigger, you kind of need it. Or if you're trying to side for some number. If you're fronting, you just want to go for the what do you call it? You just want to go for the non-soul trigger. And honestly, sometimes you actually just want to direct with the Baji, just so like you don't get memory counted on that lane. And then this would be a direct for 3 with the non-soul trigger. So yeah, that's something you have to think about for the Mikey bottom deck. Yeah, Mikey bottom deck is really good because it means that even if you almost are like ready to die at 3-6 with like a low deck, you actually don't die through your finishing turn. So you actually basically you get to kill them before you mill out because the Mikey stacks more cards at the bottom of your deck. So you actually just don't mill out. It's kind of funny. That happened in my top 4 game. I would have died if it were not for Mikey's bottom decking. Yeah, so that's really cool. Anyways, that's it for this quick guide, and it's kind of like tips and tricks with the dual laner Pah-Chin deck. If you have any more questions that I didn't answer in this video but you're just dying to know or whatever, feel free to ask in the comments section below. I'll try to get to them. And yeah, if you want to see the deck profile, it's on Trusted Collectibles. Tune in a few days. I'll actually be releasing a different video about the tournament. So I have the live stream. If you want to watch that, it goes over my tournament run, my matchups, kind of how I felt overall. There's timestamps in there, so you know you don't have to like watch the whole hour to find the information that you want. But I will also be making another tournament related video. This one is going to be about kind of how to approach tournaments, you know, from my experience as a judge and now as a player. Just kind of like the things that I think are important for tournament prep, and giving you the best opportunity and chance to do well at your next tournament. So look out for that. That's it for today's video. Thanks you guys so much for watching. Thanks for the support. Really appreciate it. It means a lot to me and it keeps me going and keeps me excited and passionate about this game. So yeah, that's it. Peace.